to reconvene the regular Board of Education meeting on October 22nd, 2012. Everyone please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming. Our safety briefing. In 40 years, we've never had to evacuate this room, but in case tonight's the night, there are 2 doors off to your right, and we also have a safety officer who will lead the way. You got a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Tupfer?
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. Next up, approval of minutes from our regular meeting on September 17th.
Move to approve the minutes. Second.
Mr. Tupfer?
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. Next is correspondence.
Yes, Dr. Heiss, I have 2 items to share with the board. The first item, and let me begin by saying that on September the 24th and the 25th, our district participated in a traumatic event crisis intervention plan training, all in our safety training for the year. And with that, we invited different teachers and administrators from the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And I did receive a very nice letter I'd like to read to the board. It says, on behalf of all who participated and who will certainly benefit, I want to thank you for involving our Immaculate Heart of Mary staff in the classes of Traumatic Event Crisis Intervention Planning. The time was most productive for our staff. Should a crisis occur in the very near future, the goal setting and protocols provided will help equip us to deal more swiftly and confidently. Thank you for the welcome offer of assistance should future needs arise for the resource tools of rebuilding lives from the National Institute of Trauma and Loss in Children. We all want to do what's best for our children. This is important work of our ministry as well. Sincerely, Reverend Thomas Kreidler, pastor of Immaculate Heart of Mary. I thought that was very nice.
Very nice.
That's all in regard to expanding our partnership. Whenever we do have professional development opportunities, we do try to involve as many of our local educators as possible. Okay. The second piece of literature that I would like to share is in regards to some possible new rules regarding restraint and seclusion. Now, before I begin, I'd like to share that we as a school district already have many of these different regulations already in place. But Betsy and I thought that it was kind of interesting to receive this information. Now, we all have to understand that lots of the different rules, regulations, and legislation that come about, they come about because of something that may have happened in the state, in one area of the state or the other, and it's all for good intention. But at the same time, what usually happens is it's a one-size-fits-all. And that's what I'd like to share a little bit with the board this evening. Just received this from the Ohio Department of Education. Actually, it's from BASA, the Buckeye Association of School Administrators, OASBO, as well as the OSBA. But what this is involving, it says the Ohio Department of Education is currently considering a draft model policy and rules regarding restraint and seclusion in Ohio school districts that would apply to all students. The draft policy and rule could have significant impacts on all school districts. This draft model policy states schools should implement an evidence-based school-wide system of framework of positive behavior interventions and supports. As a part of the behavioral interventions and supports, schools would be required to conduct functional behavior assessments for any students that displays severe or a pattern of unhealthy or disruptive behaviors that impede the learning environments for themselves and others. The assessment should be followed by behavioral intervention plans that incorporate positive behavioral interventions. Okay. Well, let's talk about that just for a moment. Previously, the terms functional behavioral assessments and behavioral intervention plans have been applied only to the context of students with for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act services, so special education students. These concepts and words have acquired specialized and technical meaning in the special education context, but the proposed policy might require districts to perform the functional behavioral assessments on a much wider group of students who might never have to be or required to be restrained. For example, let's say that a student is truant or routinely fails to turn in homework. These are patterns of unhealthy behaviors that impede the student's learning environment. Now, I know we're going off the deep end here, but these are not necessarily behaviors that would require the students to be restrained and or secluded. But with this type of rulings, we would be required to do that. Expanding the functional behavior assessments and behavior intervention plans requirements to all students could lead to several immediate practical problems, such as staffing, such as different cost, and potentially liability issues. Some of the other points, just to mention, that schools will be required to fit these additional assessments and plans into an already busy school day. That schools will be required to pay for additional staff and or staff time to conduct these different assessments and develop plans. That staff members would be required to conduct these particular assessments. What license will be required to conduct these particular assessments and create these plans? And will schools be required to implement without additional funding? In other words, unfunded mandates. And that's kind of what we're talking about. The draft policies and rules require districts to train personnel on positive behavior interventions and supports, crisis management, de-escalation techniques. However, there is no funding mechanism for training and no guidance on how the training should be accomplished. Now, the reason I say that as I started out, and Betsy, you can help me out, is that we already do many of these things. In fact, we have 2 people on our staff that are trainers of these type of assessments, and we train our staff already. But again, this was delivered to me on the last Tuesday, October 16th. And they gave us 1 week to make any comments and to get back to the Ohio Department of Education and also to the Department of Education. So with that said, we have already made some comments and we've sent that back, but that's kind of how things roll. But I did want to share those 2 pieces of correspondence with the board. Another example of great things that we're doing already in our district, but now it's something that, along with more additional requirements for us, that we may possibly have to do in the future. Thank you.
Any correspondence? Treasurer? Okay. Next, for procedures for public commentary, this is not a public meeting, but a meeting held in public. We welcome your comments. We have green cards up front here if you'd like to comment when the time comes. We will call on you. Next up is always the best part of the meeting, candidates for graduation. Peggy Johnson.
It really is with great pleasure this evening that I ask the board to approve a granting of a high school diploma to David Kong. David has completed all of the requirements for a diploma from Turpin High School in the Forest Hills School District. David Kong is with us this evening as well.
I move that we approve the granting of a diploma for Mr. David Kong.
Second.
Mr. Tepper?
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes.
David, are your parents here with you?
They couldn't make it.
They couldn't make it tonight. Well, tell them we said congratulations as well.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, David.
Thank you, David.
And next up are commendations, recognitions, the National Merit Scholarship Program commended students.
That's correct. In late September, about 34,000 students nationwide, of the approximately 50,000 highest scores on the PSAT, received letters of commendation in recognition of their outstanding academic promise. Commended students are named on the basis of a nationally applied selection index score. Although commended students do not continue in the National Merit Scholarship Program specifically, most of these students do become candidates for special scholarships sponsored by corporations, businesses, as well as their own colleges and universities to which they apply. And this evening, the Forest Hill School District actually has 6. Anderson High School students, and I apologize in advance if I fail to pronounce your name correctly, Eric Brokaw, Zachary Farmer, Haley Knuth, and Micah Morris. Turpin students, Elizabeth Brown and Alec Gonos. And I believe they are all here this evening, and I'm sure they want to join us. So I do ask the board to commend the following students for their achievement and distinction for having been named commended students in the 2013 National Merit Scholarship Program, and that a certificate of commendation be presented to them.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Tepper?
Mrs. Huebner?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. Come on up.
Students, if you'd like to join us.
I think you're going to.
Congratulations. Good job.
I do believe we have a probably very proud group of parents that would like to stand and be recognized as well this evening.
That is very exciting. Actually, if you guys would like to step out and get a picture in the hallway.
Thank you.
And parents, you're
This is your
welcome to
chance.
get your chance.
Have this
Thank you
stuff
for
that-
coming.
Thank you.
All right. So next up is public commentary. No comments this time. All right, district updates from the superintendent.
Yes, Dr. Heiss, I have a few updates I'd like to share with the board. First of all, as I know you already know because I've told you, but for the public, is that just last week, the preliminary data did come out from the Ohio Department of Education that did recognize Forest Hill School District as, again, ranked as excellent with distinction. This is the 12th consecutive year for us making the pinnacle, the highest rating from the state of Ohio. Although this is just one measure of our the success of our district, it is a pretty important measure. But with that, we're very proud and pleased, and I want to thank all of our great staff for everything that they did to help us and our children get to this, to get the district to this particular award, as well as all of our great students as well. So, share that. I'd also like to update the board on our Senior Gold Athletic Pass. It's something that we started. Actually, we rolled it out at the Anderson Days this July, and thus far we've had a number of senior citizens who have stopped in to get their picture taken and get awarded their Gold Pass, which allows them to attend any home athletic event except the Anderson Turpin football game and the Anderson and Turpin boys basketball. But other than that, all home athletic events. We just want to encourage more and more senior citizens to step forward from our area, okay? In the next few weeks, you might be seeing some changes right outside our door here a little bit. At Anderson High School, thanks to the funding provided by our Anderson PTA, we're going to be changing our marquee. We're going to be putting in an electronic marquee, kind of getting us more up to the current century. But that should be very nice, and thank you to the Anderson PTA. And also the thanks to, in part, from the Anderson boosters, athletic boosters, is that they're looking at a new press box that'll go out here on the baseball field as well. So that'll be two beautiful additions, and thank you to all of the people that participated in raising those funds and then donating them to our district to get those two great pieces of work completed. I want to also mention that, and thank Ray again, every time I go to Turpin, and I'm happen to go over there during lunch, I see the changing that we've done in the renovations of the cafeteria with a new self-service equipment and aisles that have been placed in the cafeteria, as well as the new storefront. Just for your information, last year when we kind of timed how long it took students from the very last person to get through the line, sometimes took as long as 12 to 14 minutes. And we've cut that down considerably by half or more to about 6 to 8 minutes to 7 minutes, or 7, 8 minutes to get that last person through. So that gives our students more time to enjoy their meals, and then the food is as great as it shows that there's more students actually buying and buying healthier foods. This Turpin was the last of our buildings to have that self-service capability. And next summer, we're going to be, although Anderson has all the equipment and everything in place, we're going to be looking at putting that storefront look at Turpin to get, or at Anderson to get kids in and out even a little faster there as well. So thank you, Ray, and to the work that he and his people have done in that. And lastly, I'd like to report to the board that this round of conversations with Dallas, we have one more this week. And then our next round that we'll be doing is we're going to be changing those conversations just a little bit, and we're going to be actually focusing on specific topics. In the past, it's just kind of been anything that people would want to chat about. So some of those topics might include finances, where I'll have Rick come along and he'll talk a little bit about what our district finances are looking like. Curriculum and Common Core, where Connie will probably be going with me to talk a little bit about that. Maybe our facilities and our learning environments, where Ray and I can chat about that a little bit with some of our community. And our technology innovations, where possibly Christine and I can talk about our technology innovations. And it's all in realms of, or in the whole idea of just changing that conversation and talking about the great things it really does make Forest Hills an excellent district. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, 9.1 developmental assets.
Well, Dallas has asked Megan and me to do a brief overview of the developmental assets. This is a presentation that we have done with our administrators.
And to them.
As to them, as a kickoff event for our buildings back in August, our new teacher orientation. We've done some faith-based organization presentations out in our community and other businesses that Megan and Dr. Jackson have also done. So we've spent a lot of time moving in and really embracing the concept, the foundation, the framework of developmental asset in the school district. Megan is going to tell you a little bit about the overall framework, but we also wanted to share, as you know, in our strategic plan, under our goal number 1 in student achievement, we have building developmental assets. And if you would note it, it talks about building assets that develop positive experiences and qualities that help young people avoid risks and grow as healthy, diverse, and successful individuals. So this is obviously a very strong goal for the school district, in addition to many other unfunded mandates and expectations and instructional demands and everything else that we face today. This is a significant framework that we have learned a lot about. We have built a core team in the district that consists of a number of administrators, some parent groups, teachers, and also developed some building core teams that are working on building this framework within their buildings. Our focus this year is to really focus on our language, how we're using it, how we're embedding developmental assets, how we're building the culture within our buildings, how we're sharing this information with our community and businesses, and really how we're practicing developmental assets incidentally and intentionally in our buildings. We'll talk a little bit about kind of our endeavor within the buildings as we finish up, but we're going to let Megan do the main focus of the assets.
Thank you, Betsy. So many of you might be already familiar with the answer to this question if you've attended any of our, as Betsy mentioned, community outreach events, professional development within our district. But for those of you who don't know, what is an asset? So an asset is a building block for healthy development of youth. This is a research-based framework, and it is part of everything we do as educators when we're interacting with our youth, as parents, as community members, and it really is targeted to develop the whole child. The developmental assets are a great idea, but we know there have been many great ideas in education that have come about. So the beauty of the developmental assets are that they are a research-based framework, and the Search Institute has developed this. They are a nonprofit organization. They've been in existence for over 50 years, and they really have been engaging in the research of how we can together, collaboratively, develop youth to be productive, healthy, and responsible citizens. As I mentioned, it is a research-based framework, so the data really speaks for itself. So if you are a visual learner, if you look at this graphic here, you'll notice that the more assets students are reporting that they have, the highest would be the 31 to 40 range. They are more likely to exhibit leadership, good health, success in school, and to value diversity. The fewer assets students have, the less likely they are to have these positive attitudes. On the other side of the coin, you'll notice that the developmental assets also protect our youth from engaging in high-risk behaviors. So the fewer assets youth report having, the more likely they are to engage in risky behaviors such as drug use, alcohol use, sexual activity, and violence. So those students who are reporting 31 to 40 assets are much less likely to engage in these types of behaviors. In theory, it's simple. The more assets youth are reporting that they have, the more likely they are to be successful. So the more the better, and we're working with our students to have them report higher amounts of assets in their life. The beauty of educators, parents, those of us who work with children in our everyday lives know that it's really important to promote the strengths of our students, and so the assets really do focus in on the best of the individual. They focus on cooperation and collaboration, and the language really is about honing in on those strengths instead of pointing out what the child is always doing wrong. So really tapping into their strengths. The important thing to remember about developmental assets is that every student has a story. So it's easy to make the assumption here in Forest Hills or with a student that you might paint the picture that they're a star athlete and that they are very academically successful, that they have all 40 assets. But if you look at the research, you'll notice that even students who are very successful in a traditional aspect still have assets that they are in need of developing. The same students who are struggling socially or academically, most likely they might have some assets that are strengths of theirs, but they might have other skills that they still need. So keep in mind the individual in this. No two students are exactly the same, and so we really need to, as educators and community members, look to see how we can promote assets in all of our youth. 40 assets, when I first learned about 40 assets, that seemed like a lot to take in. And so it's broken down by the Search Institute into external and internal categories. If you look at the visual representations of the assets, the colors are very intentional. The external assets, you'll notice, are the primary colors. Those developmentally are the ones that are going to come first. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the external assets in just a minute. And then the internal assets developmentally would be the ones that we would really work to develop and students would master second after they have those internal assets. As Betsy mentioned, we've been doing a lot of work around the 40 developmental assets, and this is actually our second year. Last year, our purpose really was just to build awareness so that our teachers and our families could make sense of what we were talking about when we even mentioned the 40 developmental assets. But this year, we really thought it was important to have a focus, not only as a school community, but also when we're working with local businesses and organizations, so they can help to support our focus as well. So we're focusing this year on the external assets. The focus does not mean that we're not building all 40 assets in our youth. It just means we're being really strategic about the learning activities, the communications, and the other opportunities we're providing within these external categories. So those are support, empowerment, boundaries and expectations, and constructive use of time. So throughout the year, you'll most likely hear, if you haven't already, about these external categories and see the logos that represent them. We're wrapping up, as hard to believe, it's already towards the end of October. So from the beginning of the school year through October, we really were focusing on kind of the key to starting the school year off right, which was support. As a school community, as well as with families, supporting our youth to have caring and encouraging environments. So you'll notice there are 6 assets under that category of support. We are getting ready as we approach November to roll into the empowerment asset category. Some of those assets include youth as resources and service to others. We are going to be working, we already use our youth in many ways as resources in our community and in our classrooms, but we're going to be looking for other ways to really have our youth feel valued as participants and stakeholders in our community and schools. Boundaries and expectations. If we work with children at all, we know this is a really critical category. That's what we're going to be focusing on February through March. This is about setting clear rules and consequences and promoting students to be responsible citizens. We're going to wrap up the 2012-2013 school year by focusing on constructive use of time, kind of perfect timing as we go into summer, looking to see how our youth are involved in arts, clubs, sports, and other activities, as well as making sure that they are spending some family time at home. For the 13-14 school year, as I mentioned, we're continuing to develop all of these assets in our youth, but we're really going to be focused in, as we start the 13-14 school year, on the commitment to learning, very fitting as we look at those assets are directly linked to school. So setting students up for academic success and what that looks like as it relates to the developmental assets. If you look at the next list of assets, 26 through 31, these are the positive value assets, and these, when we think of building blocks and we think of what we want all of our youth to grow up to be as healthy, productive members of society, we really focus it on the positive values, which include caring, integrity, and honesty. And as Betsy said, collectively coming together to use that language very strategically with our students so they become familiar and attach those to building assets in their own lives. Social competencies include kind of those 21st century skills into college and career readiness that we know our youth will need to develop in order to be successful. These include decision making and conflict resolution. And then finally, assets 37 through 40, really with all of these assets they've developed, what is their positive identity of themselves and the assets that they have? So their positive outlook on the future and their ability to see themselves in some type of college or career role, that they see that happening in their lives. I'm going to turn it over to Betsy. She's going to tell you a little bit more about how we're putting assets in action in our schools.
We're going to do this in under 10 minutes.
You're great.
All right. As I shared earlier, we have an action plan that is very simple, and it's really to help our teachers this year, as we kind of wrapped our minds around developmental assets, began to learn about the framework. Our focus this year is really to find ways to help teachers to connect to asset development in their daily instruction or daily involvement with students and families. We also want to actively engage our students, which is occurring in all of our buildings, using language every day from everyone across the district and community, and also very importantly, how are we reaching out to our communities and our families outside of our school district. You also heard me mention the strategic plan, and I think now I can pretty much talk about, in our strategic plan, you're very aware of our beliefs. And you will hear the language that is so embedded in developmental assets when you hear our beliefs in the strategic plan related to sharing responsibility for educating youth, having an investment in our students, recognizing student performance, recognizing our students as whole individuals, and also respecting and accepting their individuality and their diversity. That's all embedded in the developmental asset framework, as well as our strategic plan. In terms of the buildings, I'm not going to leave anybody out, and if principals, I don't want to leave any principals out if they'd like to also add any information if you have questions later. But we have lots of activities going on, and we kind of did, we meet with the buildings regularly. I meet with the counselors regularly who really spearhead this effort. But starting with Anderson, they have a pretty extensive program now that is in their homerooms that is built around activities for watching students exhibiting asset ideas. I won't talk about the troll with the orange hair, but they have some wonderful activities going on. At Turpin, they're involved very much in the PBS program, where they have tickets for kids demonstrating assets or core values to be turned in for drawings. Nagel has worked the developmental assets into their advisory committee, developing weekly lesson plans around asset building, and they're also extensively involved in the community in a number of efforts. With our elementary buildings, Mercer has a weekly asset activity at least one time a week in their building. Sherwood has a bingo board at the start of every year. That includes their assets, and I believe they've even extended it to all of the members of their faculty, including their cooks and custodians, and really involved it extensively within their building. AIR has a rose ceremony, from what I understand, where they pick a student and share how they make their day easier. Summit is teaching classroom guidance lessons around developmental assets. And Wilson has their Wilson Way Day. Maddox has, I believe they're moving into a Mustang Day, where it's very similar, where they're promoting the 40 developmental assets. So as you can hear, it is definitely a framework that has grown and developed in just 1 year. And people are having a lot of fun with the framework. Community.
In closing, I just wanted to share with you a little bit about how we've really reached out to the community. So this isn't just the school. Within the school day and within the four walls of all of our 9 schools. This really is a community effort. That whole saying, it takes a village. It truly does, with those positive adult role models, with those opportunities to use youth as resources, not only during the school day, but also in the other organizations in our community. So we have, as Betsy mentioned earlier, reached out to many of our organizations, to our local chambers, partnered with the Forest Hills Foundation, working with Anderson Township, and other local businesses to really collaborate to find the best way all together as a community we can support assets in our youth. And we have, in small pockets, Dr. Jackson and I have gone around to local community members and shared the message of the 40 developmental assets and recruited their help and support in this initiative. We are having an event Wednesday, October 24th, here in the Judd Room from 4:30 to 5:30 called Partnerships for Successful Youth. This has been shared with all the local businesses we could contact and organizations. And it's really working together to find ways that we can be partners in education so that it is a mutual two-way relationship of developing assets in our youth and using our youth as resources. So we welcome anyone in our community to join us. That's again Wednesday, October 24th, this Wednesday, here in the Judd Room from 4:30 to 5:30. So we look forward to the many ways that the 40 developmental assets will continue to spread and grow in our community, but most of all, we look forward to seeing how this really promotes the success of our youth.
Great, thank you, ladies. Just to add to that, again, Dee's here, the executive director of the foundation. I want to thank the foundation for the financial support and all of the support that the members of the foundation has given to us. The Chamber of Commerce, as Megan and Betsy said, have really embraced this. In fact, they're the ones that helped us get this event up and going for the 24th. Saga, we just spent several sessions with Saga, and they've embraced this from day one, as well as the YMCA. The work that the YMCA has done, they've been working on this, again, this is their second or third year of developmental assets. They, since we have brought this on, have really stepped up their work. And then the faith-based organizations. The different churches and the faith-based groups around have been just remarkable and phenomenal. And I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of the events that we are now doing with youth, that the faith-based organizations are stepping in and helping support those and provide activities and get kids involved in asset building. So I just want to thank those groups again. So thank you. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. Okay, next up, Human Resources Report. Tammy?
Good evening. The first item on the agenda, items A and B, are retirements. Of course, we would like to tender those with regret. Kathleen G., 29-year teacher, Forest Hills School District. She is a math teacher at Anderson, and her retirement is effective at the end of the school year, May 31st, 2013. And also Nick Booter, 13 years with the district as a custodian at Turpin, and he will be retiring at the end of this year, December 31st, 2012. As we move on to item C, we see a couple of resignations. Item D are change of assignments. Item E, change of salary. Item E, we have a change to the home instructor, teacher aide, administrative building aide, student, and pool worker salary schedule. And this is due to the change in the state minimum wage that will take effect as of January 1st, 2013. Moving on to the next page, item H, we have several appointments there you see in the classified staff. Item I, these are some special services appointments, and if you notice, the first few are the 24/7 learning instructors. And again, we would like to say thank you to the Forest Hills Foundation for Education, as they are graciously funding these opportunities for our students. Continuing on, we have time worked in addition to contract and some additional support. We see Anderson Marching Band. We also have some additional work for Turpin, Thursday School, and for volleyball game official. Moving on to item J, these would be our appointments of coaches and consultants or advisors. I'll give you just a moment to look at items on page 4 and 5. Item K would be our substitute personnel. We continue to get substitute personnel. I'm always very happy to see secretaries, cooks, and aides, nurses, because we don't have as many of those as we do, with our teachers. We're always glad to get teachers as well, but always glad to see those. And since the board meeting in September, the staffing level has increased by 0.287, and this is due to a bus route change and the filling of an existing bus route. And the staffing level now stands at 765.51 FTE. The superintendent recommends that the board approve the personnel items listed.
Thank you.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
On the home instructor, teacher aide, that salary schedule, you said
Yes.
the only thing that changed was because of the minimum wage, just the pool workers? Is that what you said?
Actually, it's the student, yes, so student pool
The minimum
workers.
wage
Yes,
was-
the minimum
okay,
wage,
thank you.
yes.
Yeah, Mr. Jeffer?
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, business operations, Ray?
First item I have is a change order. It's a negative change order amount of $165.28 to Hilfert and Pope Electric. The change order is a result of the change in the scope of work being performed by Hilfert and Pope. Specifically, we had some cleanup that we had to do, and they're reimbursing the district or discounting that for the cost of the custodial services. It's recommended the board approve the change order submitted by Hilfert and Pope Electric, Inc. in the amount of a minus $165.28.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Jeffer?
Mrs. Hubner?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes.
The next item is payment in lieu of transportation. We've attached a resolution for payment in lieu of transportation, the payment of $225.22 which is prorated over the school year, is reimbursement for conveying students to and from Archbishop Moeller, Cincinnati Hills Christian Academy, St. Edmund Campion, St. Gertrude's VLT Academy, and Bridgescape for the 2012-2013 school year. Each of the students is a resident of the Forest Hills School District, and it's recommended the board approve or board adopt the payment in lieu of transportation resolution as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Tupper?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes.
A quick comment on this. I think it's important to point out that by law, we have a responsibility, correct me if I'm wrong, to transport all students, regardless of whether they're going to public school or not, in our school district up to a limit.
Correct, as long as they would live within a 30-minute, the destination point is within 30 minutes of their home school.
I think a lot of people may not be aware that
Correct.
that's an obligation, a burden that we bear for all students, regardless of where they go to school.
And we
Thank
do
you.
it joyfully.
How's the rate determined?
The state. Last year, the rate that I brought at this time was around $189, and we got a letter from the Ohio Department of Education in April that they had changed it. So that's why I had to come back. The state sets the rate.
And so rather than take the bus, these people contact us and say,
They will
I'll take your
contact us, and
check
it,
instead?
yeah, well, it's all in, it's an all or nothing proposition.
Everyone in that school has to.
Right.
Everyone in school.
Everyone in the school, so there's no
all the
buses
students
going
going
to-
to Arch, we don't have to transport them, but we don't transport some and write a check to others. And sometimes it's a matter based upon how long it's going to take us to get the students there. And they decide that that bus ride may be too long.
Thank you.
The next item is a request to advertise for bid. These are for our summer projects. The administration requests permission to authorize the treasurer to advertise for bid for the following projects as specifications are completed. Be roof replacements, district-wide pavement replacement, district-wide building renovations, and district-wide HVAC replacement and modifications. It's recommended that the board approve the request to authorize the treasurer to advertise for bid for the stated projects.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Tupper?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes.
The last is an agreement with Tyler Technologies. It's recommended that the board approve the agreement with Tyler Technologies for the purchase of bus routing software, maintenance support, and hosting services effective October 23rd, 2012 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Is this new? This is the new software?
Right, yeah, our existing software is about 7 years old, and it's just time to update it. So we're actually changing vendors here. And the end result is we're going to have a product that's going to be more user-friendly for our parent community as well.
Mr. Tupper?
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. Next up, treasurer's report.
Yeah, 12.1 of the agenda. First item, we have our donations, almost $8,000, several PTAs, and obviously some needed treadmills from Mercy Health Flex with our partnership there, so that's a good thing. Item B, statement of board accounts. All accounts in good condition with the exception of 2, but we're actually waiting for federal funding. We've requested money. It's a little slow getting to us, but we have met the criteria for that. Our general fund receipts, item C, are on target. About a third of our anticipated revenue has been received thus far. Item D and E shows our expenditure pattern through 9/30. This is really what drives the 5-year forecast. We're still a little bit higher than the 3-year average going back, but that's still heavily weighted to just a large purchase we made early with replacement buses. So that's just kind of weighing that down. That'll smooth itself out throughout the year, but we'll watch that as well. Item F, we have the monthly bank reconciliation. G, list of investments. H, we have 3 funds where we're asking for amendments to the appropriations, 2 federal funds, and our bond retirement fund, lining that up to what the bond payment will be. And item I, we're asking the board to approve board service fund expenses. 2 updates we did, I should say I did on the board's, as the board's designee, complete the public records training on October the 9th. I submitted some information in your packets, kind of detailing any updates or changes. And also, we have our next Business Advisory Committee meeting on the 5th of November. Lots of financial topics, comparative data, consortium benefits, a lot of things there, and I'll report that in November. As recommended, the board approve the Treasurer's report as presented.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Topher?
I got, do
Oh,
you mind?
discussion? No, go ahead.
Real quick, real estate taxes on the general fund receipt, call it 48%. Shouldn't we have received half, and is that a concern at this point, or is that a delay and
Usually
other-
it's 49.51 is just is the typical. The first half is always a little slower. And delinquencies are high, so we're a little
That's my
behind.
concern,
Correct.
is there any reason to believe that we're going to come up short at that at the end of the year, or is that just slowness in the auditor's office, or?
I mean, right now, we think it's slow.
Okay.
I mean, it's still in line with what we had projected in the forecast.
Okay.
I mean, we're not out of sync there.
That's 2% would be significant.
That would be huge.
Okay.
Yes.
I can't help but ask, why do we actually have a penny change in Title IIA?
Appropriations and the anticipated revenue has got to be at or larger than appropriations, so we have to line that up to be able to spend it. So it has to line up exactly, and we have to get approval from the county before we can spend those funds. So,
Yeah, but we amended it down a penny, right?
right, in order to where we're going to spend it, yes, correct.
Tight ship. All right, Mr.
Making
Topher.
sure everything balances.
That's right.
To the penny.
Some of the other training is still to be done with the groups of food service and housing coaches. Crisis response training, Dallas mentioned that a little bit, and just historically, so you know, in 2008, we looked at our safety and crisis plans, and they were detailed and in place. No plans for after a crisis, so in 2009, we had the Southwest Business District who had been through this and were sort of the resident experts to come and train us, and we then had an after-crisis plan in place in 2009. We trained all our building teams, and then this year, they came down again for 2-day training, and 70 people were trained, again from Forest Hills and IHM. So it was a joint, it was a partnership with the parochial schools and us, and the next step is to update our plans and communicate with all staff. Safety checklist was handed out by Ray. I was shocked to see this checklist. This checklist is in every building and this is it. It's huge. There are 68, I think I counted right, 68 items on this checklist. And this is what Ray does every single day, and as do the building folks. So 68 items on here. If you ever want to see it, it's pretty amazing, all the things we do to ensure the safety of our kids and our staff. We also talked about severe weather and fire emergency. Tom Reamer spoke, and we have, just so you know, I didn't realize this, it didn't seem this often when I was in school, and maybe it wasn't, but we have 1 fire drill per month. And we also have tornado drills I think in tornado months. So I don't know really what that means, but when tornado months are. But Tom has encouraged the building staff to throw curves rather than just routinely walking out the door. So the Hamilton County system of sirens being set off in specific areas is progressing. Instead of having a siren in the entire Hamilton County, they are targeting them to areas that are actually going to be affected. The sirens will only go off for tornado warnings, not watches anymore. But Tom indicated that 70% of tornadoes strike during a watch, so there will still be alerts on radio per the Weather Service. The last thing that I wanted to mention was we talked about lockdown guidelines and drill. Our school resource officer, Bob Getke, spoke. House Bill 422 mandates that we have a lockdown drill by 12/1/12, and we have to send building plans to the state of Ohio. So we are in the process of doing that, and that's all I have.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, next up, legislative liaison report.
I have two things, and under the heading of Great Minds Think Alike, both of them have already been covered this evening. One of them was the publishing of the report card, which we can celebrate. The second thing was the draft model policy and rule regarding restraint and seclusion to Ohio school districts that would apply to all students and not just special education students. The reason I raised something that Dallas has already talked about is I got a call from one of our lobbyists in OSBA to ask if I might come up and testify on this if they wind up having hearings. I wanted to make sure I had consensus support from the board and the superintendent and the treasurer to testify on behalf of the school district. I think, as Dallas said earlier, this is one of those situations where it's not that we're not sensitive and concerned about restraint. It's an important, sensitive issue, but this is one of those situations where a one-size-fits-all just may not be appropriate. Somebody does something wrong in the state somewhere, and we get a huge bill that's cumbersome bill that causes, that's part of the concern, is the need for additional staff time away from teaching, cost to oversee this, funding mechanisms to support, and how the training is going to be accomplished. So those are some of the concerns that the state has when apparently our school district has been able to do just fine without the extra oversight of the state in this area. So again, I just want to make sure that I had consensus from the board before I represent our opinion.
My only question is, have you, the two of you talked about this yet?
No, not in person yet, no.
Okay.
But we will do so.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I'll include
Point
Betsy
taken.
in that as well.
And maybe you.
That'd be great.
Okay, just because, I'm just, not that Randy wouldn't do what we all think, I just think that, you know, in the past, way long time ago, there was something that Randy spent a lot of time on and actually vetted it with all of us before he went, and I just think that's a good idea to make sure you do have the support you need.
Point
Okay?
taken. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Sounds great. Okay, executive session.
Oh, that's me. I move that we go into executive session for the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official.
Second.
Mr. Tepper?
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubner?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes. We do not anticipate coming back into regular session after this. Our next regular meeting of the Board of Education is November 19th, 2012. It says 6:30, is that correct, or should it be 7? Oh, no, that's from this meeting. Okay. Yeah, so it's 7 o'clock. It's at 7. Okay.